welcome back. My name is Alex for stepbystepmusic.com, where I teach you not only what to play and how to play it, but maybe most importantly, why. Today's lesson is super exciting. It is on building and understanding major chords and arpeggios for bass and for guitar. You've learned the major scale. You've learned your not your arpeggios, that's what we're doing here. You've learned your scale degrees. And now it's time to start learning the notes of the chords so you can play along with other people playing those chords. In today's lesson, I'm going to tell you where major chords actually come from, where they are born. I'm going to explain to you how those notes of those chords get mixed up, reproduced, and redistributed across, in this case, your fretboard or across any instrument to produce what we call chord voicings. I'm going to teach you what an arpeggio is, in case you've been wondering, and I'm going to teach you how we use them. Let's get started. Major chords. I want you to either memorize this or write it down or both. Here we go. The major chord is simply the first, third, and fifth note from the major scale. That's it. It's seriously as simple as that. So let's take our major scale. This is the major scale pattern that works on bass and on guitar. So those are our notes of our major scale. Using my knowledge of scale degrees, I'm going to go ahead and pull out the first, third, and fifth notes. So here's the first note of my major scale. Here's the third note, and here's the fifth note. So you might not have played those before. You might be used to playing the notes all at once. Now we have to learn a new pattern or an extracted pattern of just the first, third, and fifth notes. And if I do that, if I take those notes, then I have a major chord. Here I'm on C. It could be anywhere, but this note happens to be a C. So if I look for what those notes are, I discover that they are C and E and G, and that is the notes of the C major chord. Wherever I go, that's a major chord. If I am on C and I go up to here, my fifth fret on D, and I play the same pattern, 1, 3, and 5, that is now a D major chord. Wherever I start on my fretboard, and whatever note I start on, if I play that same pattern, 1, 3, and 5, there's A. That's an A major chord. Bass players, it works exactly the same way. I have a 6-string bass here today, but it doesn't matter how many strings you have, the pattern works everywhere. I have a C here, that's my third fret on my A string. If I start there and I play the first, third, and fifth notes of my C major scale, I've got a C major chord. Guitar players, please remember that I'm using your standard pattern today. It's going to work within these lower 4 strings. When I cross that B string right there, the pattern breaks. So that's true with all of your patterns. Just as a reminder, this is for your lower 4 strings only, or this could work on these upper 2 strings because these are still tuned in fourths. So if I start here, this note happens to be an E, but it could be any note, doesn't even matter. And I play the 1, 3, and 5 pattern, that's going to be an E major chord, or that note's major chord. So a really common question I get, and a fair question as well, is if my C major chord or any major chord is only 3 notes, then how come my major chord is taking up 4 strings, 5 strings, 6 strings? Where are those notes coming from? Let's take again C major as an example. So the notes of my C major chord are C and E and G. I don't even care about that. I don't want you to think that I don't want you to learn the notes of your chords. Of course I do. But it's not strictly necessary to play these notes one at a time. However, if I take C's and E's and G's and I redistribute them across the fretboard, then I have a C chord. This is what we call a voicing. So here I have a C and an E, an open G, open strings count, a C, and an E. Notice I had that C and that E played twice. So I still have a C major chord. Again, this is called a voicing. So I could play a C chord this way. In this case, I have a C and a G and an E, sorry, C, G, C, and then an E. So redistributed notes of C and E and G. I'll do this one. I love this voicing. That's also a C chord. It's a G, and then a C, and then an E, and then a C up top. We could do this one up here. Very, very common bar chord, using all 6 strings. It's all C's and E's and G's. And so that's why sometimes you will see a guitar player or a piano player playing a chord, and the C chord or whatever chord it is can look very different at different times. So C chord, C chord, C chord, C chord. They're all C chords. They're all the same set of 3 notes chopped up and redistributed across the fretboard or the piano or the saxophone or whatever instrument it is. Let's talk about arpeggios. An arpeggio is the notes of a chord played one at a time, like this. Again, C chord. And I'm thinking from the C major scale, 1, 3, and 5. You notice I was playing that earlier to show you the notes of the chord. Well, if I play those notes one at a time in their simplest form, in other words, not C and E and G and then another C and then another E and then another G, like on top of that in higher octaves, but just 1, 3, and 5, that is an arpeggio. 1, 3, and 5. Or if you prefer on the guitar, 1, 3, and 5. That's an arpeggio. Could be way up here. Remember, as long as I've already crossed the B string, I'm good to go with my pattern. So I have a C here, 1, 3, and 5. Arpeggio. Here's how I'm going to actually use this information. If I know what chord the band is playing, then I can play along to that chord. When I play the notes of the chord, we call those chord tones. It's a fancy name for tones of the chord. Actually, that makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Anyhow, if I play chord tones, let's say the band is playing a C chord. We'll just stay with C here. And the band is playing a C chord, and I play the notes of the C chord. I play chord tones. I could even use an arpeggio to play those chord tones. See where I'm going with this? Then I'm playing the same set of notes that everybody else is. And I'm much more likely to have it sound at least decent. Now, I still get to make choices. I still get to decide what octave to play in. Do I play low? Do I play high? What's my rhythm? Do I play 1, 3, and 5, or just 1 and 5, or start with 5? You still got a ton of choices here. But if I stick with the chord tones, and I could even just play arpeggios, then I'm setting myself up for success with that chord. I'm going to show you an example of playing along to some music. We're going to switch to the A chord just to switch things up, I suppose. So I'm going to play bass along to this very, very simple track, simple drums. I've also got one strum on the guitar, just sustaining a chord so we can hear that chord in the background. But I'm going to play some chord tones from the A chord. In other words, I'm going to find my A note. Let me find that right now. I'm right here. I'm on my 5th fret on my E string. I'm going to think of my major scale, and I'm going to think of 1, 3, and 5 from that scale. Again, I'm pretending that I've been told the band is playing an A chord. I want to play along. I want to play something decent, and so I'm going to play just notes from that chord. We're going to have 2 bars in if you want to play along a little bit. And so we're going to have 8 clicks, rather 8 snare drum hits, and then we're going to be on. So let's play along. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, now I've added a little bass track in, very, very simple bass part, just a low A, just to give it some more body, some texture. But I'm going to play some chord tones to my A major chord with guitar over this track. So again, I'm starting on this A here. I'm going to just play my pattern, 1, 3, and 5, over this track. Now I'm not crossing the B string. That's where it would cross over. If I played 1 string higher, I'd be crossing over. So taking this pattern, learning this pattern first, crossing the B string later on once this pattern is very familiar, and I'm going to just play along with that pattern right there. I might even take it up an octave later on. I've got an A up here as well. So let's see how this sounds. We got 8 clicks in, and we'll start. I cheated just a little tiny bit there. I slid up and I played a high A, which is outside of my pattern. But if you know the notes of your chords, if you know the notes on the neck, then you can go ahead and you can travel around a little bit more. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That's another lesson for another day. And that is your lesson for today. You learned what a major chord is. You learned what an arpeggio is. You learned where that major chord comes from. And by the way, that's where all of our chords come from. They always come from scale degrees. That's why you spent so much time learning those scale degrees. So all of our future chords, all of our future lessons where we're learning new chords, we're going to pull those from the major scale. You also saw me in a live, real example, just doing a little bit of improv and throwing around some chord tones just to see how they sound against the backdrop of a very simple chord, just an A chord, simple music, and it sounded okay. It sounded fun. Wasn't amazing, but it sounded good. So learn that pattern, learn that major chord really, really well. Start playing along to some songs that have major chords. Figure out where those chords are, and have fun. Make some music. That's why we're here, right? If you have questions, write them in the comments or visit me at stepbystepmusic.com, and I will see you in the studio. Take care.